Do you have too many hours in Slay the Spire and want a different flavor of deck building, draft battling, death bringing? Well, that's this game. Monster Train is a tactical combat roguelike deck builder, where the forces of heaven have invaded hell and completely wrecked the place, leaving the remaining demons no choice but to hop on the Bone Shaker train and get the hell out of there. You pick your favorite demons to fight, shop, and event yourself to freedom, and that's the good old gameplay loop. There are 6 demon clans in the game to choose from, and they're all fairly standard archetypes, but you get to choose a main clan and a supporting clan. There's the red angry guys that have a lot of attack but not much health, supported by little imps. There's the huge green guys that heal and reflect damage, purple spellcasters, black monsters that eat their own morsel creatures to power up, and blue candles that slowly kill themselves and activate effects when they die. Every faction has its own champion card and starting spells, but you only get the champion for your main faction, which means red-green plays different from green-red. The champions have different upgrades they can get throughout the game, further differentiating the same color setups with different mains. You also start with 4 train steward units that function like the strike or defend and Slay the Spire, where most of the time the only thing you want to do with them is get rid of them as soon as you possibly can. At the beginning of a run, you get to pick a starting relic, which give your usual roguelite passive bonuses, and a champion upgrade. It will also tell you what the final boss is going to be and what it does. With this, you can build something to counter the final boss instead of the final boss countering you. Then there's combat. When you get in a fight, it'll show the majority of the enemies you'll be facing. There's also a random challenge mode on every combat that'll make the fight harder but give you an extra reward if you win. Combat goes like this. There are 4 floors on your train. Enemies will enter at the bottom, fight anything that's there, get hit by your stuff, and then move up a floor if they're still alive. Unless you're this bastard. He goes up 2 floors cause magical bullshit. And then more enemies show up at the bottom. You can play any of your spells and units on the bottom 3 floors. The top floor is reserved for your pyre, which is a big ol' crystal. And if the enemies destroy that, you're dead. Thankfully, it can attack back, and it pierces every enemy that gets up there. Enemies attack first, though, so you probably still don't want stuff getting up there. The floors on the train have limited space. Every floor can only hold up to 5 yellow, and units take up a specific number of that, so you have to strategically put your units throughout the train. There's a good few keywords that the game uses. Some examples are like, consume means you can only play it once per battle, incant means something happens when you cast a spell, and ember burn means you never get that card in the first place. When you play a spell, it goes into the discard pile unless it has consume, obviously. But units can only be played once unless they have the endless keyword. You gotta use those units wisely. The first turn of combat, you get 2 guaranteed draws. Your champion that can be played for free, and the first unit you added that isn't a train steward, so make that a good one. Every second turn of combat, a money angel shows up, and if you kill it, you get some nice shinies, so you have to be ready for that as well. Eventually, you'll get a brief respite from more enemies showing up, and the wave after that will be the final wave, which is led by a mini-boss of sorts. The mini-boss will repeat combat until it's killed everything on its floor, then it'll freeze over the floor and move up, unless you kill it, of course. You'll have to devise some combo to kill these guys. They have much more health than other mobs, and usually have some special abilities. When you win, you get to draft a card from your factions and acquire some currency. After that, you're back in the overworld where your train will have 2 paths it could take with various events on both sides. There are merchants for both units and spells. They don't sell the cards, but they upgrade them. Every card can have 2 upgrades, and upgrades can be big. Make a card have a buttload more HP. Give a card multi-strike so it can hit multiple times in a row. There's unit banners that let you draft cards of a certain faction, vortexes that let you remove up to 2 cards from your deck, free artifacts, money, pyre health, and frozen caves, which give you a random event where you can choose between multiple options or nothing at all. After doing a couple fights in overworld segments, you'll reach a boss battle. What kind of game would it be without those? Alice Madness Returns? Pfft. The boss battles are always the same. You'll fight a mechanic angel, a statue angel, and a kill your run angel. That doesn't mean they're always the same though. Every boss has a random trait that makes the fight slightly different. The mechanic, for example, makes bombs. Sometimes his bombs have a damage shield that absorb 1 instance of damage. Sometimes they explode twice, so you better freaking kill it or else. Until the final wave, the boss will fly around outside of the train casting their ability. They don't actually attack until the final wave, but you can definitely attack them. You can use this to your advantage and stack debuffs up on them and give them a good old smack when they finally decide to start fighting. When you beat a boss, you get your usual card drafts, but you also get a choice between getting another Ember, getting 1 more card draw every turn, or making the floors on your train 1 yellow bigger. These can all be valid depending on what you're trying to do, and that's pretty much the game. You do 2 combats, a boss, 2 combats, a boss, 1 combat, and then die. I mean the final boss, whatever. Whenever a run ends, you gain experience towards unlocking new cards and artifacts per faction. You also get gold bordered cards if you win. Woo, I have to pay for those in Hearthstone. There's also an Ascension mechanic which provides additional challenges up to 25. The first Ascension though just gives you more starting cards so you can get some idea of what you're building right at the beginning of the game. There's also daily challenges and custom challenges where you can create your own awful encounters. And there's also a kind of multiplayer mode called Hell Ride where you can do a run with other players and try to get the highest score. Somehow, all of us died right after the first boss on this run. Like, I guess we suck, but, you know, I suck the best. Wait a second. And that's the game. Choo choo, let's look at the pros. The soundtrack in this game slaps. It's just great. Check this shit out. This is the theme for the first boss. The first boss. The sound design in general is great. The little jingle that the game makes before you go into a fight. Oh, that's great. The sound of the second boss screaming at me like this really reminds me of Metroid Fusion Ridley. Knowing the final boss at the beginning is like a straight improvement on an issue some people had with Slay the Spire. Of course, if you're me, sometimes you just forget that you're fighting the buff boss and build a buff deck. Whoops, doesn't matter, still won. I like the streamlined overworld section. There's still choices to be made in what side you take every time and what to upgrade, but you don't have to plot out 5 moves in advance because it's just a straight line. I could see how people wouldn't like that though. The final wave mini-bosses every combat are pretty interesting because you have to plan around a much more prolonged fight that your regular enemy setup wasn't ready for. Or maybe it's the opposite where you can kill the boss but you're having trouble killing the normal mobs. I like that getting rid of cards is pretty easy. There's even a dedicated portal for it. And the shops also sell a way to purge cards, which you might need to get rid of those dang train stewards. Seriously, these guys are just dead weight. Is it required that these deck building games start you off with something that you just want to get rid of ASAP? Why not start with something faction specific that's a little more useful? It really doesn't bother me that much, but I'd rather start off with something a little more thematic. As soon as you get Covenant or Ascension 1, you'll start off with some random cards. Sometimes they're pretty good and sometimes they're trash and don't work together at all. It would be cooler if you could draft them, maybe? Okay, the only actual semi-complaint I have here is that it really seems to me like some of the artifacts are just way better than some of the other ones. For example, in red, there's an artifact that gives +2 attack on kill. Alright, that's okay. But then there's all demons get multi-attack 1, which means they attack twice in 1 turn. That's like infinitely better. There's stuff like that in other deck building games too though. But sometimes you just get a certain artifact and you're like, whoa, I probably won now. When I first saw this game, I was convinced that it was a bad Slay the Spire wannabe. And the first little while I was playing, I wasn't sold on it. But it's actually pretty darn good. It definitely gives you that, oh, just one more run. I could try this one thing where I get the one dude and make him take so many steroids that he'll solo the final boss. It'll be great. And then you die somewhere stupid because you put a train steward on the board and it's taking up a space that you actually need to play something to be able to kill something. Just me? Oh, dang it. I played this game for 23 hours to make this video. Monster Train is $25 or your regional equivalent on Steam, and I definitely got my dollar to hour ratio. Not that that's the ultimate measure of a game being good. This isn't an early access game either, but definitely has plans to be supported in the future. Whenever the devs put out their roadmap, I'll put it in the description. Hey, you know what else you can find near the description? The like button. Give it a little touch if you like this video. And subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. That's all I got. 2 Lainz, out.